Welcome into another edition of the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Carter Karels. Quite the weekend for Texas A&M sports, and we're going to get into it for sure. An impressive showing for the A&M basketball team on the road against Ole Miss, just demolishing the Rebels in the rematch between those two programs. A&M baseball stays perfect with a dramatic walk-off victory on Sunday against Rhode Island. We're going to talk about that too, and a big victory last week, Tuesday, over Texas as well. Just one of the only remaining undefeated teams in the country left, and so just a remarkable story. And they are really clicking on both sides. So we're gonna talk about them, but we're gonna start off with basketball. Carter, how are you doing? And what do you kind of make of? It's been quite the quite the ride the last couple of weeks with the A&M basketball team. What do you kind of make of everything?
Well, we should have expected this, right? I mean, this is
Yeah,
what
we kind of talked about this.
Yeah, that's what they do, man. I mean, I'm fully expecting in the tournament they're either gonna lose to Ole Miss by like 12, and everyone's gonna be pissed, or they're gonna win. They're gonna go all the way to the tournament final again, and it's gonna be the same old song and dance. But yeah, it feels like deja vu. I mean, this team's kind of figured some things out, and right now, uh, they're really uh, they're really close to getting in. I mean, if you look at no matter what bracketology thing you look at, they're first four out. Some people think they could be a first four in team or last four in team, and so they're right on the edge. And we can talk about scenarios and things, but this tournament, everyone always talks about how no one cares, but like the selection committee doesn't care about tournaments and stuff. I don't think that's really true this time with A&M. I think however many games they win in this tournament could really decide if they get in or not.
Well, here's the one thing I think, right? When you look at this A&M basketball team, they've got kind of the quad one wins to back it up, and that's something in the past they haven't necessarily had those quad one wins. They haven't necessarily had that non-conference schedule. That's kind of working in their favor. They've got some bad losses, and we've discussed that quite a bit on this podcast, but you do have the opportunity sitting right there, and they're going to open up the SEC tournament on Thursday evening against Ole Miss, a team that they've got to feel really good about, coming off a 26-point win this past weekend on the road, now playing them on a neutral site. You win that, and a date with Kentucky awaits on Friday. I feel like if they beat Kentucky, you and I have talked outside of this podcast about if A&M can get to 20 wins, and that would include winning the last three, and it would include winning a couple tournament games, then you start to really talk about the SEC tournament. And it kind of still feels like, if you play scenarios out to really feel good, it feels like if you kind of hit that 20 win mark, you're sitting in a good spot. And obviously the further you advance, they get to the SEC tournament championship game, I think they're probably in. But one of the big stories, and I think this is a good place to start because we got some questions on it on the board, is with Manny Obaseki and what he's done the last three games. It's really quite the story, because he was a player that was in 5-star territory coming out of high school. I think missed by just a couple of spots, but obviously expectations were really high, and he's had kind of an up and down journey with a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure on him throughout his college career. He had kind of a strong stretch going last year, then breaks his hand at Florida. Unfortunately, that pretty much sidelines the rest of his season. And now, this year, kind of still waiting for him to take that next step. And these past three games, let's just be honest, it's as good as he's played since he's been in College Station. He takes home his first SEC Weekly Honor, an SEC Player of the Week award. And if A&M continues to get this kind of production from him, that's huge. And it does provide another ball handler. It provides another scorer, and a guy who's a really good rebounder and really athletic. What do you kind of make of what he's brought the last week and a half? Because it's been one of the big stories in this 3-game winning streak.
A&M has needed something like this all season. I mean, you see how much pressure has been on Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford. You've seen them have really good games, but you've also seen them be really inefficient. A lot of it's because they're carrying so much of the load. They have such a high usage rate. To have a third guy in there has, I mean, completely elevated the entire team. And with Obaseki, the only reason they really inserted him in the lineup, according to Buzz, was because Henry Coleman went down for a couple games. And they felt desperate. They felt that, hey, yes, we're the number one rebounding team in the country, but we need to sacrifice some of that because we got to score. We got to have flow. We got to, do better. We can't have these offensive lulls where we go 7 minutes without scoring. So they insert Manu Obaseki in the starting lineup for the first time since the NIT tournament 2 years ago. And they really focused on having these guard-heavy lineups, these, small ball lineups, more pace, more flow offensively. In the past, you see these guys just kind of standing in the corners, watching the guy ISO at the top. And, Tyrese Radford will try to barrel his way through and get a foul and flail a little bit, try to get that embellished foul call. But now there's more of a flow to the offense. There's more of a, hey, you've got three guys that can dribble past their guy, get to the hoop, kick it out. It's just like unlocked an entire new level to this offense that they didn't have because they just didn't have a lot of guys that could go past their man and create. And that's something that Manny can do. He's a really good athlete. He's got a really unusual style. He's this herky-jerky athlete where you kind of watch him and you're like a little bit nervous. You're like, is this guy about to dribble off his foot? Is he about to, be a train wreck? And then sometimes he'll just blow past his guy. And then there's other times where you're like, oh, is he going to, he just threw it off the backboard on a terrible miss at the rim. And there's other times where he'll make some circus shot. And you're like, good gosh, yeah, this is why he was a 5-star recruit. So for him, I've always felt like it was a confidence thing. He never was the guy at A&M. He was never empowered to be the guy. Anytime he's had a good stretch, he's had something that's kind of held him back. But now he's being empowered. He's in the starting lineup. Buzz has said that, this team has 3 ball guards, what he describes as guys that he's comfortable with in dribbling and initiating the offense. That's Taylor, Radford, and Obaseki. And Obaseki. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so he's felt like he's always been a guy who can initiate the offense. He just hadn't had the confidence or the empowerment to do it. And now he finally is, and everything's clicking around him. And, I mean, if he can keep this up, this team's going to be hard to beat because, I mean, with how they played against Ole Miss, it looked like how they played against Tennessee earlier this year where you're just thinking, man, I don't know how many teams in the country can beat this team on a neutral floor. So very impressed. I am curious to see if he sustains it. He's never sustained it so far in his career, but it didn't seem fluky either. It wasn't like he was just making a ton of shots from half court and getting a lot of, 12 free throws every game or anything like that. Like, it was very legit what he was doing. So I feel like it can be sustainable.
Yeah, and you look at just kind of the adjustment he's had to make, right? And it's kind of rare in today's day and age because going back to high school, he was the guy. And when he went to John Paul, it was him and Jalen Tyson who were kind of the guys were relied on to carry the load there. And he's always been able to rely on his athleticism, and he's a super good athlete. And that was something A&M loved about him. They loved his ability to rebound the ball and be able to start the transition after a rebound and having a ball handling guard that can basically grab a rebound and head out in transition. And so those were a couple things they liked about him, but there was clear there were areas of his game when he arrived at college that he needed to refine. His shooting needed work. His free throw, he struggles from the free throw line, needed work. He needed to learn how to kind of harness what he's doing and play more in control. And I thought Buzz Williams kind of hit the nail on the head last week when I think you asked him about kind of the herky-jerky style. And he said, listen, one of the biggest things is his teammates now know what he's going to do. And they can kind of better predict what he's able to do, when he's going to pass, when he's going to dribble, where he's going to pass the ball. And that's allowed him to kind of fit better. And that was something that that I think when you watched him, it was kind of okay. He would slash in. There'd be a spin move, maybe draw a foul, maybe miss, but shots kind of felt contested. They felt difficult. Now it feels like he's playing with so much more confidence and so much more feel and much more under control. And the talent has always been there. It was just kind of one of those steady progressions he needed to make. And look, he's as patient as anybody, and a guy that really does put in the work. And so he's built on the right things. It was just going to take time, and I think it's taken just more time than probably a lot of people expected coming out of high school, given his expectations. But if you're A&M, I think you're exactly right. This takes one of the conversations the second half of the year, it feels like, has been, how do you take the pressure off Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford? If those guys aren't having a good night earlier this year, A&M was done. They were relying on Anderson Garcia to get offensive rebounds. Maybe Jace Carter has a big night. And, if Jace Carter is now your fourth scorer, I think with him and Anderson Garcia kind of doing a lot of the dirty work down low, that feels like a lot more repeatable formula for A&M that they can move forward with. And it puts them in a better spot. And then you've got Henry Coleman. If you can get him healthier and try to get him going, then this team and this picture starts to look a little better. Still work to be done. I mean, it's a lot more positive, and this team has had to ride some rough waters the last couple of years, and again this year during that 5-game losing streak. But they just have something about them. They're able to kind of just get out of it somehow late in the year and put themselves back in the tourney conversation. And now it's going to come down to what they can do these next couple of games, but they certainly put themselves in the conversation.
Yeah, let's talk about the tournament chances, because
yep.
like I said, it's my favorite time of the year. It's also my least favorite time of the year, because the cherry picking that goes on this time of year, I'm just like, are you guys, what are y'all doing? Like, well, can we be honest? Like, why do we only focus, oh, well, they have this many quad 1 wins or this many quad 4? Okay, we got to look at everything, right? And I was laughing the other day. I mean, I think A&M has a case over some of these teams, but everyone's so caught up over Mississippi State because of the head-to-head and they have a quad 4 loss and things like, and A&M has more quad 1 wins, but it's also like, well, Mississippi State's 4 spots higher in the net, and they don't have the quad 3 losses that A&M does. So you have to kind of look at things from I'm looking right now, they're 42nd net, A&M's 46th. I would pick A&M over Mississippi State to make it, but like it's just, people act like it's such this huge difference, where I think the margins are so razor thin. There's other teams in the mix, like Indiana State lost their conference tournament game, and they're like, I'm gonna look really quick. They're 20. Well, they're 29th in the net. But Indiana State also has a quad 4 loss and only one quad 1 win. And I mentioned these teams just because it's like A&M has one of the more unusual schedules resumes in the country. They've got 5 quad 4 wins. If Florida can make a run in the tournament, that'll improve them to 6 quad 4 wins. If they beat Kentucky, they got 7 quad 4 wins. Or I'm saying, sorry,
quad 1 wins. Yep, I got you.
Quad 1 wins for A&M. They've got 5 right now. Florida makes a run at 6. If they beat Kentucky, it's 7. So anywhere between 5 and 7. If they keep making a run, they could even get it up to 8 or 9. But 5 already is a lot. And they don't have any quad 4 losses, which is great. But they do have 4 quad 3 losses, which is very unusual for teams that are, within the top 100 of the net. So how do you stack up a team that is capable of beating the best in the country, is capable of beating Tennessee by 16, but also is capable of losing to Arkansas at home and Vanderbilt on the road and Arkansas on the road and LSU at home by 15? Like there are some weird – this has got to be one of the most hot and cold, bipolar, weird, like just all over the place team that A&M's ever had. And so I look at it, and I think in the previous 2 years, you could kind of excuse and make a case for this team where you're like, man, last year it's like they went 15-3 in conference. How are you going to give them a 7 seed? That's ridiculous. Like they should have had a 5 seed, maybe a 4 seed. The year before, they went on a crazy run and made it all the way to the SEC tournament final. They had won like 7 out of 8 games down the stretch. They started 15-2. I know they had the 8-game losing streak, but they were right up there with all those teams. And I felt like they were playing as well as almost anyone in the country. And I thought they got robbed not making the tournament. This year, though, it's kind of like, hey, man, you were top 15 in the country before the season. You were expected to be this, you were expected to be that. And you kind of blew your chances a lot of times. Like, if this team doesn't make the tournament, you should have beat Vanderbilt. You should have beat Arkansas. You should have beat LSU. I'm not saying they don't deserve to be in the tournament. I think if they beat Ole Miss, you certainly can make a case. If they beat Kentucky, they definitely should be in. But I don't think if you're an A&M fan, you can't be as angry as you were the last 2 seasons because this team had all the opportunities and all they did all year was underachieve. And, you know, they had injuries, right? They had some really great moments, but start to finish, they had such an advantage with that schedule and beating Iowa State and beating Ohio State and beating SMU, and they blew it down the stretch. Now, again, they can figure it out, but I just don't think people should get as rallied up this year because, hey, it's a little bit different of a feeling than it was the last couple of years.
100%. And I do feel though, like at the last couple of years, like last year, obviously they were in and you knew they were in. It was just a matter of what seed they were going to be. 2 years ago, you kind of felt like they had to go on a run because they were, you know, you look at Joe Lunardi's got them in the first 4 out right now. When they entered the SEC tournament 2 years ago, they were next 4 out or maybe outside of that. And it was kind of the run that they went on to get to the SEC tournament championship game that put them in the conversation. So I still feel like you have an opportunity. You're within kind of what you would say is the margin of error, right? Like you're within a window where a result falls your way, a result doesn't fall your way, you can play your way in. And so when it comes to like the debate about the SEC tournament and if results matter, they do matter in the sense that one result here or there can maybe sway things. It's when you have to make a huge leap up 6-7 spots that things start to get more difficult. When you're, you know, in those final 2-3 teams, like the conversation goes back and forth. And I don't know what way the committee, and I think that's the easiest way to say it, right? I don't know what the committee is going to make of A&M's resume. That's the toughest part. They could look at the 5-7 quad 1 wins and think, wow, like they've really beaten some good teams. They've got some terrible losses in there. A lot of them in conference play. You know, you're going through conference play. Things are going to happen in conference play, but you know, give them credit. They scheduled a hard non-conference schedule, played it, won some of those games, and beat some of the best teams in the country. And you know, on the strength of their quad 1 wins, we're going to put them in. They could look at those quad 3 losses and think, you know what, like you shouldn't have lost to Vanderbilt, you shouldn't have lost to Arkansas twice, and you shouldn't have lost to LSU. They could look at it a number of different ways, and that's what makes it so hard to kind of pin. Even go back to this past weekend, Joe Lunardi jumped them like 6 spots after the win over Ole Miss, just in blowout fashion. And it's they went from outside the next 4 out to a first 4 team out. And so it's just they're very difficult to predict. And you're right, they've put themselves in this situation, losing to Vanderbilt, losing to Arkansas, losing to LSU. Those losses, 2 of them, if you look at even 2 quad 3 losses, it's like, well, those aren't great, but you know what, it's the last second losses against some of these teams that kind of have them in this situation, but they still have a chance to play their way out of it. They've gone to the SEC tournament championship game each of the last 2 years. So they clearly have kind of the confidence and ability to go do it. Now they just need to go do it. And if they do, I don't think, funny enough, there'll be a lot of teams that want to play them. And in the
There,
NCAA tournament, because
yeah,
if they enter having won 5 of 6, it's just kind of the roller coaster that goes with Buzz Williams. But you know what? You get your way into the tournament and see what happens. You once you
yeah,
get in, it doesn't matter what seed you are.
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the bubble that Lenardi posted earlier today, and it's just so funny. Some of these resumes, like Villanova, is almost 500. They're like 17-14, but they're like 33rd in the net. They've got some really impressive wins. They've got some good losses, if you want to call them that. And it's just like, how do you judge a team that's like 500, and then there's like an Appalachian State that didn't win their conference, but they're like 26-6, and they don't have a ton of bad losses. There's just weird resumes all over the country. I was telling you before we started recording, New Mexico is a team that's in the first 4 out with A&M, and what they're doing is they're going to play Air Force in their first round of the Mountain West tournament, and that was a team that they lost a couple weeks ago, and it's their one quad 4 loss, and that loss may cost them getting into the tournament. And if they lose to them again, they're definitely out. If they beat them, maybe the committee likes that. But it's a game I'm intrigued by personally, because my soon-to-be brother-in-law is on the Air Force basketball team. Shout out to Drew Mills. But if you're an A&M fan, you're going to watch that game and you're saying, let's go Air Force, because if Mexico loses that, no way are they getting in. You're watching Villanova in the Big East tournament and rooting for DePaul. Hey, if DePaul beats Villanova, there's no chance that Villanova's making it, right? So there's like all these weird scenarios. A&M not only has to root for itself, but it's got to pay attention to these other conference tournaments and hope that things play out in their favor, because you might be a first 4 out team, but you may fall back because of these bid stealing situations where, a team that doesn't need an AQ to make the tournament loses in their conference tournament, and then all of a sudden they got 2 guys in their conference making it. Or, some bad team goes on a run and all of a sudden they're making it, and that steals a spot from you. So these next few days, even before A&M plays Thursday night, going to be really fascinating to see how it all plays out. I think A&M needs to beat Ole Miss. It would be a quad 2 win for them, which is nice. It would stay as a quad 2-1, just barely. Kentucky is a quad 1 game. I think if you're A&M, you don't like that draw, because Kentucky is playing as well as anybody really in the country right now. And A&M, what it took for A&M to beat them, they were at home mid-January, and they just shot lights out. I mean, I was expecting them to regress to the mean a little bit in the second half, but they just came out firing and did not stop lighting it up. They won it in 97-92. Kentucky's been pretty bad defensively all year, but they just have so many scoring options. Rob Dillingham and Reed Shepherd, they just have so many guys on their team that can light it up. And so when you're an A&M team that struggles to shoot, matching them toe-to-toe is going to be pretty difficult. So A&M's going to have to bring their A game if they advance and play Kentucky. I don't think that they have to beat Kentucky to make it. I think they've built enough momentum to maybe make it with 19 wins. But they have to hope that there's no bid-stealing fiends out there. They got to hope it all plays out in their favor if that were to happen. But I think if you win those 20 games, you beat Kentucky, they're in without a doubt. So that's kind of how I see it. But they lose to Ole Miss, I don't see them making it.
Yeah, they need to win at least one probably in the SEC tournament to kind of really feel like they start to have a chance. And borrow a line from Joe Lenardi. He said, I think it was in one of his recent bubbles things, he said, or NCAA tournament teams don't lose to DePaul. So if you're Villanova, don't lose to DePaul. I think that's kind of the lesson of the day. So we're gonna talk about a team that is definitely not struggling after the break, and that is a red hot A&M baseball team that is coming off yet another weekend sweep in dramatic fashion. this time over Rhode Island. So stick with us. We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back into the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Carter Karels. 16-0, Carter. 16-0 after a walk-off win on Sunday. A bit of a wild one. This team has won some blowout games. They've looked really impressive. Needed to kind of come from behind and rally a little bit on Sunday. Hayden Schott had the game winner for A&M, and now one more non-conference game on Tuesday night, and then it's on to conference play and a trip to Gainesville to face Florida up first. What do you kind of make this A&M baseball team? And I know you've had a chance to talk to some of the staff and the players over the last couple of days. Just about as good as a non-conference run as you could ask for if you're A&M.
Yeah, so dominant. I mean,
yeah.
they're going into Sunday. I think they were winning every game by 8.5 runs. They've gotten it done in pretty much every way you can think of: hitting, pitching, defense. I mean, it's just there's not really a glaring hole with this team. I mean, yes, they still got to prove themselves against better competition. It's a long season. They're going to be injuries or lulls or slumps and things like that. But there's just so many options in this lineup. It's hard to see them having a lot of bad games. And this pitching staff has been nails. Really the biggest story of the season. Ryan Prager still has not given up a run. He's got 40 strikeouts through 4 starts. He's making a case as one of the best starting pitchers in the country right now with how he's playing. And I don't know if anyone really saw that coming, just coming off of Tommy John surgery and having not pitched and been a starting pitcher like that. You know, he had been in some big moments before, but just the week-to-week starter, he hadn't been that yet. So to see him do this has been really impressive. Justin Lankin had a pretty nice outing actually yesterday. Had a bad pitch to end it that led to a solo home run. And then you see Tanner Jones from Jacksonville State kind of still easing him in, but he had a season high 8 strikeouts on Saturday, and is starting to kind of really play at a higher level. But looking at this weekend with Rhode Island, it was kind of the first time they looked human. Saturday they win 6-0, but they were not hitting the ball very well. I think they were like 5 of 28. They got 3 of those hits in the first inning. They ended the game 2 of 22, 2 runs in the last 2 or 3 runs in the last 8 innings. So they weren't hitting the ball very well. And then in Sunday's game, their bullpen just crumbled in that 2-inning stretch there where Justin Lankin's got a 1-hit shutout going. He's got 11 strikeouts, looking awesome. They had shut Rhode Island out the first 23 2/3 innings of that series, and then Lankin gives up the home run. They take him out of the game, and Rhode Island just, I mean, you talk about like positive regression. It was just like, okay, now this is the best hitting team in the country, and it wasn't even. I should say it wasn't even all hitting. It was a lot of free bases too, a lot of walks, a lot of things like that. I think they got like 8 runs on a couple hits or something. I might be wrong on that, but it was weird how many free bases they gave up in that stretch. Then all of a sudden you're looking, it turns from 7-0 to 11-7, and I think this is kind of what this team needed. They needed kind of a kick in the butt before conference play, because they hadn't really been challenged. They had been beating everybody by 9-10 runs every game, and here they are 11-7. and they chip away the lead. It's 11-9 going into the bottom of the ninth. And what a dramatic sequence that was, where they get it 11-10. I think there may have been runners at the corners. Caden Sorrell comes to the plate. I want to say it was a 0-2 count, and he watches 4 straight pitches. And that last pitch, I think it was a ball, but it was pretty close. I remember Schloss after the game was like, "Thank you."
You did. Yep.
But it was really, really close. And for a true freshman to watch that on a 3-2 count with the game on the line, it was not, I should say, it wasn't runners at the corners. It was bases loaded because the walk ended up scoring a run, tying the game. But wow, what a moment that was. And then Hayden Schott delivering in the clutch in the 10th. That guy's kind of been the clubhouse hero, if you will, the fan favorite. He's always firing off the funny tweets after the game. He's kind of, I don't want to say team mascot because that makes it seem like he's not a good player. He's a great player, but he's that really fun personality, and pretty cool to see him do that. I think it was the first walk-off at Olsen Field in a couple of years. But they needed that because they hadn't really been challenged like that. So they go to Sam Houston State. They could go to 17-0. And it's interesting because A&M and Florida State are the only undefeated teams left in the country. Florida State has a midweek game against Florida coming up, and then A&M has the 3-game series at Florida. So Florida has a chance to end either undefeated season, or A&M and Florida State are just going to beat up on Florida, and all of a sudden they're going to be – aren't they like 7-5? They're going to be like below 500 after having all these hopes and dreams before the season. So, it's cool to see. I was a student here when they went 24-0 in 2015, and I just remember how much hype and pressure there was back then, where it was just like, oh my gosh, how long can they keep this going? You're not going to go 60-0 or anything like that, but to see how long it goes is pretty fun. And they get through Sam Houston State pretty easily. I think that all eyes will be on them at Florida this weekend. And if they keep it going through then, I mean, I don't know how you don't rank this team number 1 in the country, because it's starting to be like, okay, you know, they're 7th, they're 6th in some polls, right? They got to maybe be number 1 if they mow through Florida.
100%. I think there's still just that question of, okay, can they do this to start SEC play? But you look at just the formulas there, right? The big middle of the lineup led by Braden Montgomery and Jace Laviolette. You've got those two. And, I look at Ryan Prager in one of the things this team was really missing the last couple of years was that true Friday night starter that would get you off to a good start and deliver a good start and put the bullpen in a good spot heading into Saturday and Sunday. You know, there was short starts and kind of, up and down, and that just kind of trickles into the entire rest of the weekend. And so, the fact that you've been able to get this from Ryan Prager has been huge. And then, it's just moved into Tanner Jones, Justin Lampkin, Chris Cortez has still walked some guys, but has been able to kind of keep the runs down and all that. But that's the thing, right? Jim, you're probably going to have Jim Schlossnagle this week talk about the free bases. It's something A&M's done a pretty good job of so far, limiting free bases. You give up free bases, and that's what happens. It can happen to Rhode Island. It can happen at any point during SEC play. And this team's not going to obviously go 60-0 or anything like that, but they're, the pieces are there to be really, really good. Just got to continue to stay healthy. There's going to be injuries, but they're playing as well as they have under Jim Schlossnagle at this point. And you're right. If they can go into Florida and make a statement in Florida, I know Sam Smith is going to be heading down to that series. So that'll be a lot of fun for him. I know he told me he had been kind of looking forward to this trip for a while. So if you're down there, be sure to say hi to him, and he'll be down there for the weekend series. But just a lot to like, and really good weekend on around A&M athletics. You look at what basketball did. You look at what Baseball did. Softball continues to be really, really good. And so, a lot to kind of like there. A&M women's basketball is hoping to get good news on the NCAA tournament front. So a lot to certainly keep track of. And spring practice, we're going to get into it soon, is kind of right around the corner as well. So Mike Elko's first spring. So a lot to certainly like around the A&M program right now, and a lot to discuss. And so we will certainly be back soon to discuss plenty more of that. Thank you to everybody for joining us. Be sure before we go to do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's really quick, easy to do. We'll give you a notification every time a new video drops. Like and share these videos, and we will see you guys soon with another edition of the GigEm247 Sports Podcast. Thanks for joining us, everybody.